Today, I'm reacting to a Jesse James West workout to break down what's actually effective about his workout versus what's mostly there for entertainment. I have a PhD in exercise science, focusing on muscle hypertrophy and lifting weights, and I'm involved in ongoing research on the topic, so I'll be approaching things from a scientific perspective. I've also had the pleasure of meeting Jesse in person, so everything I say is purely for the sake of education. Let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to train back.
Real talk, Jesse is one of the more jacked or most jacked individuals I've seen in person from YouTube. He has a great physique, and as much as his content is outside of my niche, I don't really watch much of it, I have to express respect for the fact that he keeps training even with a pretty busy schedule in terms of traveling and stress and whatnot. So yeah, hats off.
Relentless Gym. I want to show you something really quick. So Claudia for Christmas got me a Relentless USA sign. Now if you didn't know, oh my God, no! Wait, do you just pop it back? Okay, it snaps back in, thank God. I don't know why I'm whispering. This is the Relentless USA sign. I have a company called Relentless USA. Make sure you guys go check it out, relentlessusa.shop. But right here, it's gonna say Relentless USA, blue neon lighting. And then above me here, we're gonna get an entire row, all the way from the mirror to the other mirror. The whole entire row in the middle is gonna be the honeycomb lighting. So it's just gonna be really bright downloading, nice and white, which is gonna be really nice. We do have pretty white lighting right now, but it's not the brightest. All right, so we're hitting back today.
I'm a bit of a lighting nerd, so this is going to be a slight tangent. Do I even go on this tangent? Why not? You'll notice that I'm not currently in my usual studio, where we have top-of-the-line equipment for lighting. We built a huge softbox as a ceiling, which is about, I think, like, what, 60 feet by 30 feet-ish? It's a very, very large softbox that is all the way on the ceiling of the gym, which might in fact be the world's biggest softbox. I've looked it up, and I honestly think it might be. And we certainly paid a lot of money for it. And you might be saying, why aren't you there then? And well, it's because we don't have heating, and it's currently freezing in there. So if you notice a lot more videos in this setup, that's why. But to Jesse's point, lighting is a bit of a rabbit hole. If you've ever watched content on YouTube and you think, oh, that looks really good. Much of it, I would say not most of it, but a lot of it, comes down to lighting versus the camera being used. Most of the cinematic look comes from how you light. And how you light really isn't down to how bright it is. It's more about ratios. The ratio between one light and the next, the ratio between one side of the face and the other. Likewise, while down lighting for physique purposes is great, side lighting can also work really well. Maybe angling yourself so you're roughly at 45 degrees from the window. Especially when it's not currently golden hour or you're getting direct sunlight in through the windows. Windows can be a great natural light source that is quite soft and quite complementary to most people's physiques. Because we're on the topic, and this is probably the only time I'll ever get to talk about lighting on YouTube, to be perfectly honest, if you ever want to go for more of a photo shoot type look, realize that pretty much every fitness photo shoot you ever see is either downlighting, lighting from a 45-degree angle, combined with one or two edge lights. Edge lights are simply lights you place so that you get that little trink, the little light here, which helps define you and distinguish you from the background. And in the context of looking jacked, it also helps your edges stick out a bit more and give you a better silhouette. Not an expert on the matter, but there goes my one and only lighting rant for the rest of my life on YouTube. And all I have to say, Jesse, spend money on lighting. It's good stuff. Why is it freezing in there? Well, it's pretty cold, and we spend so much money on lighting and everything else that we cannot afford to install heating. So keep supporting the channel so I can actually record in my studio. All jokes aside, all of this is only possible thanks to you guys. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
We're gonna start off with a lat pull down. Now this machine keeps breaking on me. I have to literally treat this machine with so much love and care and fear because I'm afraid it's gonna snap. So we're gonna put on this bar, and I guess this just goes for everybody to be careful with your gym equipment. Whether it's your gym or another gym, be respectful. Here we go. Big back, get the in the sack.
Quick aside, I am seeing a lot of Matrix equipment here. Matrix is kind of the standard line of equipment, brand of equipment in most of Europe. And let me just put it this way, it is not known for being the best brand. It's almost known for being one of the worst. Some Matrix machines are great, like that hack squat you can see in the background right now is pretty decent, but a lot of it kind of sucks. It doesn't typically go super heavy, so even full stacking many machines is quite possible, so you sometimes need to do higher reps than you really want to. And many machines like this pull down here don't necessarily work if you're much above 6 foot, because the machine bottoms out before you get a full stretch, which we know is important for hypertrophy.
I am tight.
My thoughts on Jesse's technique on pull downs. Overall, honestly, pretty solid. A modest amount of lean back, a good tempo, he's getting a pretty good stretch at the top, he's not crunching his spine down to get those last few inches all the way down, and involving abs unnecessarily, overall solid. It's only a warm-up though, so let's see. If you want to level up your training, check out MyoAdapt, the app I co-founded to help you apply the science from this channel. It builds evidence-based routines around progressive overload and smart exercise selection, lets you emphasize the muscles you care about, and tracks progress automatically. Train anywhere, at home or in a gym, in as little as 15 minutes, and switch between gyms seamlessly. Head to MyoAdapt.com and use code WOLF for a free 2-week trial. You can also book a free call below to see if we're a good fit. I'll work with you directly to optimize your training, nutrition, and recovery. Big thank you as always to Rascal Apparel for supporting the channel. You can use code WOLF for 10% off their training gear at rascalapparel.com.
We're gonna be doing a lat pullover. So obviously I'm just getting warmed up right now. Biggest thing when getting warmed up is treating it like a working set. If you just do it to just do it, you're never gonna be good at doing it. Same thing goes in the bedroom. If you just do it to do it, you're never gonna be able to do it again because they're never gonna call you back. Been there many times.
Okay, there's a couple of layers to what Jesse's saying here. Number one, you will get most of the benefit of warming up even if you don't treat it like a set, because the main purpose of warm-up tends to be increasing temperature of either the target tissue or your core body temperature. Whether or not that's strictly necessary for hypertrophy training is unclear, but if there is a benefit to be had, it is through those things. And those things are achieved whether you're being explosive and treating it like a proper set, or whether you're simply doing the motion in a more controlled fashion. The main thing is simply moving and generating heat. The second layer, and this is where Jesse is actually correct, is that being explosive and treating it like a proper set, aka you're treating it with the same intent and forcefulness that you would a traditional training set, it means that you're producing higher forces, you're recruiting more motor units, and that has been shown in the research to potentially improve your walking sets. What I'm referring to here is the post-activation performance enhancement effect, or PAPE for short for non-nerds. Basically, doing a heavy set where you produce plenty of force a few minutes before your fast walking set can increase performance. Let's say you can usually get 10 reps with 225 on squats. Doing a set of say 1 to 3 reps with say 250 a few minutes before your walking set at 225 might allow you to get 11 or 12 reps. You may also be able to get that same benefit by squatting say a bit lighter, 225, 180, whatever it is, but being really explosive. Because whether you're lifting a heavier weight more slowly because you're being forced to, you're not strong enough to lift it quickly, or a lighter weight more forcefully, being explosive, maximizing how much force you produce throughout the movement, making it as quick as possible. The amount of force your muscles are generating is relatively similar either way. So I think 1, getting a heavy warm-up set in before your first walking set can be a good idea for performance, and 2, if you're doing that, or even if you're going for a lighter warm-up set, treating that set with high intent and being explosive can potentially get the same benefits as one heavier working set.
All right, first set, 172 pounds. Ladies and gentlemen, I weighed in at 188 the other day. Once I hit 190, I'm going on a cut. 190 is the heaviest I want to get. Any more is just going to be an excess amount of fat. So let's hit this and keep moving. All right, now I know my form was kind of ugly, but my first set, I just want to feel heavy weight to feel the muscle. Now I'm gonna use a little bit better form here. Oh my God, it burns. Oh, pump cover's coming off.
A few things regarding technique and regarding what he's actually doing here. Number 1 is what he's doing here, which is leaning back on the way down, and then kind of, without moving your arms much, bringing your chest to the bar, meaning that you're essentially reducing the range of motion at the bottom and involving other muscles. The second way, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of as you get close to your chest, crunching down to get the bar to reach your chest without actually moving your arms yet again, because that part is the hardest part of the range of motion. The third one is kind of never going all the way down or all the way up and always just kind of some partials in the middle where you can lift the most. He was aware of this, and he did clean it up for the drop down set, so that's perfectly fine. Regarding what he's doing afterwards though, and I'm not sure what he's actually doing, going straight from pull downs into pullovers, I wouldn't usually recommend this. Regarding the technique he's using though, going from pull downs to pullovers, I usually wouldn't recommend say muscle group supersets for most people because they don't offer that much more. And if you were going to do them, I would do a pullover first, followed by a pull down. That order will pre-exhaust the lats going into the pull down, making sure that your lats are a limiting factor and not so much your biceps or forearms or what have you. Additionally, he's not using straps on the pull down. Pull downs, rows, shrugs, and for sure deadlifts are probably exercises where you should be using straps. Once you get reasonably strong, your grip does tend to become a limiting factor. And even if it's not, any amount of attention you have to dedicate to making sure the bar doesn't slip out of your hands is attention you're taking away from giving that set your utmost and maximizing stimulus for your lats, not your forearms. Because when you're doing a row, when you're doing a pull down, when you're doing a pull up or a deadlift, what you're really trying to train here is not the smaller forearm muscles. It's training your back, your legs, whatever it might be. Those are far bigger muscle groups, whereas the smaller ones, like the forearms, are best trained with isolation movements anyways. Do you need to use straps on movements like ladder raises and curls? Probably not. You can if you want to, but it's certainly not mandatory there. But for bigger movements that use larger amounts of weight, where your grip needs to stay tight throughout the whole set, use straps.
Under our belt, this is where you have to really start focusing, making sure you're contracting properly, because if you just start going back and forth, supersetting with not an intention behind it, you're not gonna get a good workout. So I'm gonna hit the 150s now, and I'll be honest, I wanna do 170, but I have to drop the ego right now, do the 150s, and maybe even do 130, just get perfect form and actually get perfect contractions. Dropping to 132, finishing off. Superset. Holy f.
So by using drop sets and supersets, he's definitely getting a lot of volume and stimulus in for his lats in not that much time. Typically, instead of doing drop sets plus supersets and potentially doing some more back work in the same session, you may be better off spreading that volume more across the week. The most comprehensive study we have on the topic of per session volume, how many sets you do in one session for one muscle, suggests that up to 11 sets, you get more hypertrophy. But once you go past around 11 sets, whether or not you get additional benefits from doing more and more sets for that one muscle in that one workout is less clear. So instead of really piling on the back volume or the lat volume in this one session, it might be better if, say, instead of doing push-pull legs 6 days a week, you did upper lower 6 days a week and spread that lat volume over 3 days. As far as the pullover goes, his technique here is pretty subpar. The point of a pullover is to isolate the lats through a full range of motion and getting a deeper stretch than oftentimes many compound exercises allow you to get. However, the way Jesse's performing these here, kind of just going halfway up with a bunch of bend in the elbow, he's never really getting a full stretch on the lats. So what I'd like him to do is kind of bend over a tiny bit more, get his arms further up on every rep, potentially set the cable a bit higher if required, or even kneel down so that he can get a full range of motion on every rep. Pausing briefly in the stretch would also be a bonus.
Get burned. Moving on to exercise, technically number 3. I consider that first superset as literally just one exercise. We're gonna hop on the same machine over here. Everything is very simple on my workout. I pull down, I pull this way, and then I curl. It's very simple. I'm gonna take the V-bar handle, we're gonna attach it to the low down here. I gotta feel out the weight and see what I do, but pretty much what we're gonna do is gonna stretch my back the most amount I can by putting my hip on this pad here. It's almost like a chest supported row, but we're gonna do a hip supported row. And right here, we're gonna stretch, and you're gonna squeeze, and you wanna pull your shoulder down, back, and almost twist it a little bit away. That's the full contraction of your lat. The full stretch and full contraction looks like this. So we're just gonna do that with weight now. Holy crap, that's one side. Now we gotta do the other.
My thoughts on his exercise selection and execution here. 1. I think it's great that he did a pull down, aka a vertical pull, which targets predominantly the lats and teres major through, in this case, shoulder reduction. And then he's moving on to a row variation, which predominantly targets the upper back musculature like the lower traps, the mid traps, the rhomboids, via scapular retraction, scapular depression, and in this case, even targets the lats a bit more via lateral flexion of the spine. It also looks like he's allowing his spine to round a bit on the way down, which might give him some extra erector spinae stimulus. That's that one back muscle that runs all the way up and down the spine, which is responsible for extending the spine, bringing your chest from caved in to out. One more note on exercise selection here. He adopted an overhand grip for the pull down, and now he's using a neutral grip for the row. Switching up your grips like that across a workout and across a training week for the back is a great idea, because it makes sure that if there's any differences in hypertrophy stimulus, you're minimizing redundancy, and you're really targeting all areas of the back as best you could. There's a couple of issues with how he's performing this though. Number 1, the amount he's leaning forward does correspond to not just spinal flexion, aka collapsing your spine and then bringing your chest out, but also to hip flexion, meaning bringing your torso and your thigh closer together and then further apart. That motion is hip extension, bringing those two further apart. It's what you do during RDL or during a good morning, and hip extension is performed not by your back muscles, but by your glutes, adductors, and hamstrings. As a result, he might be involving more of his lower body than he really intends to, and not isolating his back quite as much. Another thing he mentioned, and he's including in his technique here, which is technically inaccurate, is that spinal rotation, kind of bringing it all the way around and rotating the spine away from the cable stack. That is not something the lats do. That's something the obliques do. And practically, the two can feel kind of similar, training the obliques versus training the lats. So personally, I wouldn't advise rotating the spine into the movement and away from the movement. I would rather see someone do lateral extension to lateral flexion. So crunching down sideways at the top of the movement and then re-extending as you come down. Lateral flexion of the spine is a function of the lats. On the positive side, he's doing a great job here of stretching out the upper back musculature and the lats. He's just involving more muscle groups than is really necessary. A more isolated technique might give him a better stimulus to fatigue ratio here.
Holy crap. See, that's where I gotta be careful. This thing's gonna break again. Literally one.
Jesse's doing a pretty solid job here of pushing close to failure. You can tell he's getting reasonably close to failure. For bonus points, what I would love to see is for him to actually try the last rep for several more seconds, because he's effectively ending the set when the going gets tough rather than really confirming he is at failure. Additionally, for a bit of extra stimulus, what he could do is performing several partials in the stretch position when he can't quite get another full rep. I call those lengthened supersets. By doing those partials in the stretch after failure, you might get a bit more stimulus, especially for back movements, where the toughest part of the movement is nearly always in the peak contraction. Finally, I just noticed this, but he's not using straps on this one either, which I would highly recommend.
One set is done. This is just like Bulgarian split squats, where when you do one set, you feel like you're done, but you're not. You have to do the other side. So we're gonna wait like 30 seconds and go again. Okay, so as you saw in my last few reps, what I'm doing is I'm doing a full range. And then once I get 10 and I can't get any more, I'm moving to just half reps. But I'm not just curling it and getting it. I'm still using my back, still curling through the lat. There is science behind the lengthened partials to where if you're gonna do a partial of a rep, be fully stretched. So for lats, you wanna be doing them like this. You know, for biceps, it's down here. So we're just doing the bottom portion of the lift a few extra times to get more tension on the muscle.
Lengthen partials mentioned. Big Jesse W. Yeah, completely agree. Funnily enough, I just mentioned that, and there he goes. I personally like to take this technique to the extreme by doing partials until I literally cannot move out of the stretch anymore. Meaning that even with my best attempt to move the weight, I'm just stuck in that stretch position. That just makes sure that on a per set basis, I get as much stimulus out of that set as possible. Get more exposures to the stretch position, get more total volume load in, and all of that probably does increase the hypertrophy stimulus. So yeah, big fan.
Oh my God. Holy, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Dorito chip back. That's a full Dorito. Okay, we're gonna be doing some dumbbell rows, 2 arms at a time. I'm really focused on squeezing my mid to upper back. So all of this up here, I'm gonna go pretty light. I'm just gonna do like 2-3 sets and just kind of feel it out.
Exercise selection wise, I think it's great that he picked a second horizontal pulling movement. He did a superset of pull downs and pullovers earlier. That's a ton of stimulus for your lats and teres major. But as far as his rhomboids, mid traps, and upper traps went, just one movement might not have been enough depending on the overall structure of his routine. If he's only doing 1 or 2 pull days a week, you definitely want more than that. Since overall across the week, for most muscles, you're trying to rack up close to 20 to 40 fractional weekly sets. If you're only training your back once or twice a week, you're going to have to do plenty of volume. As far as the variation and the rep range he's doing here, I'm not a huge fan. Dumbbell bent over rows are amazing for their time efficiency. You just grab a pair of dumbbells and get going. However, doing them for high reps kind of sucks, especially when he's already worn out from the cable rows, from the superset of pull downs and pullovers. Chances are he's going to be ending a lot of sets here not because he's actually reached failure in his traps and rhomboids, but more so because he's just tired, man. Instead, doing these on an incline bench, supporting his chest, supporting his whole body, and just focusing on pulling as opposed to needing to support the whole movement might make it a little bit better. Not a huge deal, but it is a slight limitation here. Technique-wise here, he's also involving a bit more hip extension than I would like to see. He is doing a great job of keeping his back pretty close to parallel to the floor though, which tends to maximize the stretch on the lats and keep the movement a bit more challenging, as opposed to doing a bent over row where you're not actually bent over. And again, Jesse, please use straps. At this point, his forearms must be absolutely cooked. Looking jacked and lying like this, which is clearly flat, you know, you can see that there's very few shadows. You can see that the whole image is roughly the same exposure. If I had to say based on the reflection in his glasses and how bright the wall is directly behind him versus off to the sides, there's probably a window directly opposite of him, and that sort of direct lighting on you is a great way to look flat. And yet, here Jesse is, still looking jacked. That's a great way to know that, yeah, you're pretty jacked.
People keep commenting. I'll post something about, I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is my natural 8-year transformation. And they're like, you said natural? You're lying. Because if you were actually natural, you wouldn't say you're natural. It's like, what? What is the logic? Everyone's traumatized from other people lying about their natural status, that when someone's actually natural and mentions it, they're like, just do you, man. Just do you.
This aged like goddamn wine. With the recent Greg Doucette and Hussein Farhat circus, which I didn't comment on because frankly, unless I have something of value to add to a conversation, I'm not going to jump onto a trend just for the sake of it. I personally think that that is pretty distasteful. When it came to the Dr. Mike controversy, for instance, the only reason I jumped in is because I felt a lot of critiques were somewhat misunderstanding the role of a PhD, what it should be like, what the intentions behind the critique in the first place were, and points that I think very few other people were actually in a position to make, having not gone through a PhD process and having some knowledge of it. But yeah, don't worry too much about who's natural and who's not. Jesse has a great physique, that's that.
All right, so next up, we're gonna be doing a single arm lat pull down, one arm at a time. Now the biggest thing, same thing like the single arm row, we're gonna extend as if you're reaching for top shelf cookies, all right? Grandma keeps her cookies top shelf. And you're gonna grab those cookies, pull them into your stomach right there, boom. I'm gonna start off with my right side this time because all the other unilaterals, I started off with my left, so just to get a little bit extra symmetry.
So, technique-wise and setup-wise, it's not bad. This is more of sort of like a high row variation, which can give you a good amount of stimulus for both your lats and your upper back muscles. Execution-wise, there's a couple of things, 3 things really, I'd like to see done. One is setting up a bit more off-center so that the arm comes across the body a bit more, which is a unique benefit of a single arm variation like this. Gets you a bit of extra lat, teres major, rear delt stretch. 2 is, at the risk of repeating myself, using straps. And 3 is avoiding that pause in a very squeezed position. Feels great, but as far as hypertrophy goes, if anything, it's taking emphasis away from the stretch position, which we know is likely more important for hypertrophy. I love that the music choice here is pretty much the equivalent of a real estate tour, and that's kind of what this gym feels like, so hey, you made it.
Holy 3 sets, 10, 12, 15 rep scheme. Kind of went off program there, but just did what felt good. Okay guys, so for the last exercise of my back day, we're doing Smith machine shrugs. So the thing is with this, be very careful because you can easily pull your trap and then you just like can't move your head or anything. So for me, I'm just gonna do a few reps as my warm up and then get into 2 or 3 sets. But the biggest thing is actually training your traps if you lack them like me. I basically don't have traps, like they're barely there. So I have to train them a lot. We're gonna do a few sets. You can use straps on this, we'll allow it.
So with how much weight Jesse is using here, I would rather he use dumbbells. He's not actually going heavy enough to not just use dumbbells, which is a bit less of a pain to load up and whatnot. You also get less friction on the way down, aka you get more eccentric loading, which may or may not be a good thing, but it's worth a try. I like that he mentioned you should use straps for this one because even more than other back movements, because of how heavy you can go, use your straps on shrugs. If he wanted to use more weight in the stretch, he could just load it up more and do partials in the stretch without using body English, reducing the fatigue while simultaneously, potentially, increasing the stimulus, compared to cheating the weight up.
Alright, so next up we're gonna be moving on to biceps. We're gonna do dumbbell curls, keep it plain, keep it simple. I'm gonna go heavy on my first set, and then we're gonna move on to some lighter sets. So 45s and then probably 35s on the next sets. Curl it, baby. This is biceps for the guys.
Overall, really solid, nothing wrong with some standing curls. I would personally prefer if he did incline curls, a bit less fatiguing, a bit more stretch on the biceps. He has a bench right there, wouldn't take any additional time, but hey, standing curls feel great. In terms of technique and intensity-wise he's doing a great job. You can tell he's going to or past failure. He's doing partials at the end to get a bit more stretch emphasis. He's keeping them relatively straight, which is nice. The one thing I don't like to see is that kind of pause at the top, but no big deal. He's doing a great job of curling in an arc, suggesting he's not just extending his shoulders and kind of drag curling the weight up, which tends to make it easier and mess with the muscle length of biceps during the movement. So yeah, overall pretty solid as far as traditional execution of a traditional exercise goes.
That I wasn't focused with the 40s or with the 35s, so I just put them down, hit the 30s until my arms felt like they were gonna start bleeding. That's dedication. Moving on to the very last exercise of biceps. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to cliffhanger you right here.
Hey, another bicep exercise, what could it be? Is it a bicep curl of some sort? On a serious note, really solid stuff. Pretty much once a week I'll do the exact same and just run the dumbbell rack down to get a lot of stimulus, do a drop set of dumbbell curls. It's a great way to get a lot of stimulus in, have some fun in the gym. It's not the most optimal thing of all time, but at the end of the day, who cares? It's also about having fun. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this. Technique was usually at least decent. He had some thinking in this as well, where like he was emphasizing the stretch with partials, he was picking a bit more stretch-based exercises, he was thinking about biomechanics, he had a good amount of versatility and non-redundancy, generally pushed things pretty close to failure. Like honestly, as far as just meat and potatoes training goes, this is pretty solid. So those are my thoughts on Jesse James' workout. Honestly, pretty good. But what are your thoughts? Do you think his workout was solid or was it poor? Do you agree with my critiques? Leave a comment down below letting me know. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in that next one. Peace.